As the W times R between Russia and Ukraine continues into its second year, diplomatic discussions are intensifying, with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky playing a central role in the negotiations. On the 20th of November 2025, during a pivotal moment in the conflict, Zelensky addressed the nation and the international community, reaffirming his stance on what kind of peace Ukraine will accept once the war concludes. His words were clear: Ukraine is committed to peace, but not at any cost. Zelensky's message was direct and resolute. Ukraine needs peace, but it has to be real peace, a peace that will not be broken by a third invasion, a dignified peace. This declaration made in his nightly address following a critical meeting with US part officials underscores the fundamental position that Ukraine will not accept a peace deal that leaves its sovereignty in jeopardy or its people subject to Russian influence. The backdrop to this declaration is crucial. The United States, Ukraine's staunch ally in the conflict, has long provided military support to Kyiv in the face of Russia's aggression. However, as the war has dragged on, there have been increasing pressures from various quarters, particularly from some international actors, calling for a swift resolution to the conflict. In this context, the EU has proposed peace plans, some of which Zelensky believes could potentially align too closely with Moscow's maximalist demands. These demands, which include Ukraine ceding territory or altering its political structure, are non-starters for Kyiv. According to Zelensky, Zelensky's message is not just about the desire for an end to the fighting. It is about the conditions that must be met for peace to be meaningful. A dignified peace means peace that respects Ukraine's independence, its sovereignty, and its right to determine its own future without foreign interference. For Zelensky, this is not negotiable. His insistence on this principle speaks to the national pride and the resilience that have become the hallmarks of Ukraine's resistance against Russia's aggression. The Ukrainian people, Zelensky knows, have sacrificed too much, both in lives lost and in the destruction of their country, for peace to come at the expense of their dignity. But the peace that Zelensky envisions is not one that comes at the cost of Ukraine's territorial integrity. A key point in his address was the firm rejection of any peace proposal that would involve Ukraine conceding territory to Russia or making any significant compromises on its sovereignty. We will not accept any peace that does not guarantee our security, our territorial integrity, and the dignity of our people, Zelensky stated. These words reflect the bitter reality Ukraine faces. While the country has fought fiercely to maintain its independence, the threat of a peace deal that could leave Russia with a foothold in Ukraine's territory looms large. The US has been an important partner in Ukraine's defense against Russia, and Secretary of the Army Daniel Driscoll's visit to Kyiv was part of ongoing efforts to reinforce this support. But as the war progresses, the question remains: how can peace be achieved without compromising Ukraine's core principles? For Zelensky, this answer lies in creating a peace agreement that recognizes Ukraine's right to self-determination and the sovereignty of its people, while ensuring that Russia faces meaningful consequences for its illegal invasion. For Zelensky, the stakes of these negotiations could not be higher. The peace process is in many ways a reflection of Ukraine's future. A deal that undermines Ukraine's sovereignty would be a betrayal of the thousands of lives lost in this war. As Zelensky spoke to the nation, he reminded Ukrainians of the ongoing sacrifices their people are making on the front lines and in their everyday lives. His words were an acknowledgement that while the goal of peace is paramount, the form of that peace must be just and respectful. One of the key aspects of Zelensky's message is the necessity of international support for Ukraine's position. Ukraine has garnered significant backing from the West, particularly from the United States, but there are signs that some of the international community's patience is wearing thin. In some quarters, there is a growing frustration with the length of the conflict and the lack of progress in peace talks. But Zelensky, with his characteristic resolve, has made it clear that Ukraine will not buckle under this pressure. He has stated that any peace deal that is forced upon Ukraine will not be accepted. Ukraine will not accept a peace that comes at the cost of its future, he asserted. As for Russia, Zelensky's position is also clear. Russia must be held accountable for its actions. The Ukrainian president has repeatedly stated that Ukraine will not stop fighting until Russia is forced to withdraw from all occupied territories. This, Zelensky argues, is the only way for Ukraine to preserve its integrity and ensure that future generations will be able to live in a free and independent Ukraine. The question now is whether the international community, particularly the US, will continue to align with Ukraine's stance, or whether the pressure to bring about a resolution to the war will lead to compromises that Ukraine cannot accept. Zelensky's speech also served as a reminder of the human cost of this war. Millions of Ukrainians have been displaced by the conflict, and thousands of civilians have lost their lives in Russia's military offensive. But in the face of this hardship, Zelensky has been unwavering in his belief that peace must be built on Ukraine's terms. He emphasized that the international community must understand the importance of preserving Ukraine's sovereignty, not just for the sake of the Ukrainian people, but for the future of Europe and global stability. In his words, Ukraine's victory is not just Ukraine's victory, it's a victory for freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. This message is powerful, and it's resonating far beyond Ukraine's borders. Zelensky has become a symbol of resistance, not just for his country, but for the global community that supports Ukraine's right to self-determination. His leadership has drawn admiration from leaders around the world, many of whom are standing firm behind Ukraine as it seeks a just peace. But the path to peace remains uncertain, while Ukraine's military continues to resist Russian advances on the battlefield. The prospect of negotiations remains fraught with difficulty. Zelensky's insistence on a dignified peace has placed him at odds with those who believe that compromise may be necessary to end the conflict sooner. The question remains, can Ukraine and Russia find a way to negotiate peace, or will the war continue to rage on with no clear resolution in sight? For now, Zelensky's message is clear. Ukraine will continue to fight for its future, and that future is one where its independence, its sovereignty, and its dignity are non-negotiable. Ukraine has earned the right to choose its own path, and that path will not be dictated by outside forces. The world watches, waiting to see how this conflict will end and what role international powers will play in shaping that outcome. In the coming days and weeks, as Zelensky continues his efforts to secure Ukraine's future, the diplomatic landscape will undoubtedly shift. But one thing is certain, Ukraine's fight for dignity, sovereignty and peace will not end until it has secured a lasting peace that respects the fundamental rights of its people.